it.
You're good.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Changing Times. It is Wednesday, November the 6th, and I tell you what, we have a great show lined up today. We are live at the Axe Media Group headquarters in Springfield, Missouri. It's going to be a sunny, beautiful day in the mid-60s, and I believe our country has survived a political campaign and election last night, and I just believe one thing, Mary and Kevin, is that we need to continue to pray.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people have been praying for a long time about our country, and I would just say, just because the election is over, it's just now beginning. We have got to heal our country. We've got to be better than what we are, because we're the best in the world and people depend on us. So let's continue to pray. Let's work together and make our country great again. So that's all I'm going to say. And then you know what? Next Monday is Veterans Day.
It is, and we have a special guest with us this morning.
Yeah.
Kevin, if you would face the camera,
Yeah.
then they can see who we have here. This is Kevin Weaver. He's the president and CEO of the Warrior's Journey. I just learned this morning that it's actually an international organization. And so we're going to learn more about that in honor of all of the veterans, because the Warrior's Journey gives really lifelong support to veterans. And I think you're going to love what you hear today.
That's
Go
great.
ahead.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm Lynn Morris, and you are.
I'm Dr. Mary Byrne.
Yes, you are. And I tell you what, so we are excited. And I just met Kevin, and so I'm excited to hear more about the Warrior's Journey and what you guys do for veterans, because just tomorrow out at the Springfield Veterans Cemetery, I'm on the board out there, and we're having a dedication for a new monument that we have. And you can never do too much for the veterans.
That's so true.
And
Thank
we
you.
just need to continue to do as much as we can, honor them every day that we can. And so I love Veterans Day every year. I'll be over at the Elks Club serving lunch on Monday for the veterans and
Nice.
down in Ozark, Missouri. And so I love this time of year to serve the veterans.
Well, it was always special to me because my husband was an Army veteran. His father was an Army chaplain. So he was marinated in the military culture.
I like that word, marinated. That's a very great metaphor.
Well, it's absolutely true. And then if you get married into that marination,
Yes.
it's pretty much your lifestyle.
You're a warrior too.
I
That's it.
am. So
Yeah.
we'll get into talk more about that. Kevin, will you tell us a little bit about your military background and how you
Yeah.
got involved with the Warrior's Journey?
Yeah, that's great. And so my military background goes back to when early days in my life. I'll give you the very quick version of it. But growing up, I always had an affinity to the military. My dad was a government contractor. He was an aerospace engineer, worked for Vought Corporation and Lockheed after the Vietnam War, and he was one of the engineers that worked on the F-16. And so I just always had a connection, through kind of my dad, and we were a very patriotic family, and going back
And
to
where were you living?
in Michigan. I grew up in Michigan in a rural area. My grandfather, we had a farm, and it was cool. I mean, we lived kind of in the little tiny rural town, but then my grandfather had a farm a few miles away, and so we were always on the farm. And then Detroit was about
Working with the machines of the farm.
That's right. Well,
And
I wish we had more machines. A lot of it was manual labor.
that's something Tom used to talk about. It is that when the machinery broke down in World War II, it was the farm boys who
Yep.
knew what to do.
That's right.
And took the tools and fixed it.
That's right. Yeah. So had a great growing up, and and having the patriotic family that we did. I was always interested in history, especially Civil War history, World War I, World War II, and my grandfather, though he didn't serve in World War II, he talked about those days. He was born in 1899. My dad was the youngest
Civil War.
of three. Yes. Yeah. So just into World War I, he was 18
Right.
years old, and then
Right.
World War II. So he would tell me story. It was just fascinating to me. So the
But
military,
he grew up during that
He did. Yeah, he did, and he had
tumult in this country.
and he had a medical issue that precluded him from actually serving. So,
Okay.
but so all that to say that going in, I kind of wanted to. I really was pursuing an appointment to the Air Force Academy. I wanted to fly, and I thought this would be great. And then I had an encounter with God. Quite honestly, I And when I was 16 years old, I had a friend of mine that led me to Jesus, and so things really changed. It didn't really change my patriotism. In fact, it just gave it better scope and perspective, realizing that, I'm first a citizen of God's kingdom, not, this,
right.
but again, but it was intriguing to me, thinking in terms of how this country was established and how faith and values, the Judeo-Christian ethics, that were so involved with our founding fathers, and it became even more fascinating to me. And so I ended up going to my dad. My dad was a little interesting. He was like, "What did you do?" And later my dad followed. My whole family now is serving the Lord. That's another long story, but
Love to have him back on.
yeah, that which was, my dad and I had a little bit of, I wouldn't say conflict, but he was like, well, he didn't really understand what was going on, and thought I was maybe losing. And with the Jim Jones thing was happening about the same
Right.
time, with
Right.
you remember all that
what
stuff.
cult did you join?
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
it's like, no, Dad, it's not like that, So I just submitted to his authority and just said, Dad, no, I mean, but I didn't. But at that point, I knew I really wanted to pursue ministry. At some point. And he's like, well, what about the Air Force Academy? And that was all going well. In fact, I had my congressional recognition, my, grades were good. I mean, it was all moving in that direction. And I just said, I just know that's not what I'm supposed to do. And he's like, okay, well, what you need to do then is you need to go to engineering school. I ended up going to the University of Michigan and studied at Oakland University as well. Two different universities there locally. I grew up in Michigan, so
I was a Buckeye.
Oh, I'm sorry. So don't hold that against me.
No.
So great football program we had.
I know.
So
I was teasing. It's really true. I was engaged to somebody who went to Michigan, but it didn't work out, and we understand
yeah,
why.
now you know why, right? Exactly. That's awesome. So went to school for a couple of years, and my dad could tell. I mean, I was pushing through it, but because his thought was, well, hey, if you do some ministry thing, and when you fail at that, you need something to fall back on, because you can't make a living doing that. He just didn't have any concept at the time. And so long story short, 2 years in, he was actually transferred to Texas, and my whole family moved there. I was already in college, and so I didn't, he said, hey, I want you to seriously think about something. Why don't you join the military? You could probably take a break from school. I know it's not, it really wasn't what I wanted to pursue my studies. And why don't you join the military? And I felt, it's like, you know what? I feel a peace about that. So I did. I enlisted in the Air Force, and I thought, let's just see what this does. And I'm going to use this as a time for me to grow closer to God and, just serve, and I always wanted to serve. And it was great. And I did. And I ended up being in security forces and the Air Force, which is military police basically, and then worked some with the Office of Special Investigations, which is an investigative unit like NCIS or CID in the Army, and had a great time. And I went to Panama. And when Howard Air Force Base was, U.S. Southern Command was there, ended up going to Panama in 1982, and I was there through all the way to the end of 1987, and it was fantastic. I was only supposed to be there 2 years, and had a great experience there. And I didn't date. I wasn't. I just kind of decided, this is not going to be about. I'm just going to focus, on growing in God and doing my job and really enjoying this time to serve. And Grenada happened during that time, so we were involved with that, which was so short and so small. It was a little blip on the radar, but it was pretty significant because it was the first combat conflict that we had since Vietnam. And a lot of the guys that I served, my supervisor was a Vietnam veteran, combat veteran. So I had exposure to some of that, and so all of this, and I watched. And so this, I kind of lead into the second part of your question, kind of fast forwarding here. So through that experience, I began to see what we now call invisible wounds in the lives of guys that I served with and guys that were in those experiences, and to discover that the military, when you serve in the military, it creates a unique set of circumstances that most people don't understand unless you've served. And you as a military wife would
Or
understand
you've
that.
married into it.
Right, and you experience those too. You get what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And of course, post-traumatic stress, PTSD, we hear so much about that. And I'll come back to that here in a second. But that was the beginning for me. And so, I started just, being there for the guys I served with, just being a friend. It wasn't pushing something, but because of my faith, I had a deep love for the guys that I served with. And I wouldn't do the things that they did, many of those things. We'd go to the NCO club and they'd all party, and I'd be like, okay, I'm driving you guys home because I don't want to see you dying, or get in trouble, So I was there, but I had a relationship with them. It didn't bother me to to engage with them because, I knew God had a plan for their life too. And there were, dozens of guys that I actually led to the Lord, through, it was really cool. But it wasn't a churchy thing. It was just a relational thing. And I thought, this is great. When you give guys opportunity to just share and you build a trusted relationship, there's an engagement and a vulnerability that happens, and you can have discussions with people if you earn their trust, right? I was learning that, and it was great. It was just a natural thing, and I loved it. It was, I love people, so it was great. So that was my experience. I ended up doing I didn't go to any other duty station. I extended twice there in Panama. I stayed the whole time before I ended up permanently departing after I actually did a little bit longer than 4 years because I extended that last time. I had to extend a little bit. So, but I got out, and in the meantime, my family came to Christ, and my dad was like, "I give you my blessing, go do ministry." So I got out, went to seminary, and then 2 years later, I went back to Panama. My very first pastor. I met my wife. We got married. And we had just had our first child, 2 years into our marriage, and we went back and I pastored a church to American military after the 1989, campaign there, Just Cause that happened in Panama, So, and a lot of the guys that I served were still there serving. They were many of them were already there, so it was really great. And then, so for 3 years, we just poured our hearts and lives into the military, and the DoD actually opened a chapel that they didn't have enough people for. So I actually got to be like a civilian chaplain, and we lived on base, and we had base. It was an amazing experience, So
and that's what I talk to church pastors about when I have the opportunity to get in conversation, because so many of the churches are organized around programs.
Yep.
And I'm going,
so true.
You've made a mistake there. It's really about relationship.
That's right.
And it's not how many game nights you have. It's about how many people you know.
That's right.
And get to know well and actually have the freedom to discuss Jesus.
Yes.
Because that's what you don't have in the world.
Yes.
And I see too much of the churches trying to model business models from the world and bring it into church.
So good.
And
I would maybe somewhat articulate that in the sense that what we at the Warrior's Journey now, what we say is we want to do everything we can to build engagements, because God entrusts people to us. And so in that entrustment that he gives to us, what is it that God is doing in that life? And my duty as a friend, to be truly a friend, the kind of friend that Jesus calls us to be to people, is that what can I do to add value, and what can I do to support and help that person grow in the plan that God has for their life.
So how did that lead you to the Warrior's Journey? And was it established before? How long before?
No, I co-founded the organization in 2014 with a gentleman by the name of Mark Flattery, who is the director of Network 21-1. It's a world missions organization. I'll tell very quick, 15 seconds. So pastored, we came back from that, church planted church planted and did church revitalization for 32 years. Every place from, we were in Springfield here years ago. In fact, there's a little tiny church called James River that so I was the second. I came from Panama after and I worked with Pastor Lindell, and we were friends. And prior to us going to Panama, we did some college ministry at KU, and that's how I met John. And so we were the second staff members. We came when there were about 80 people, and then we left in 97 because things were just blowing and going. And so and I told John, I'll help you get this thing off the ground. And was like, whoa, this turned out to be a lot bigger than we even anticipated. Then went to Seattle, Washington, spent 10 years there doing a church revitalization work there. And then
you could use that again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and there are some really great churches there. There really are. In the midst of that, it was a very interesting place to go. And then when we left there, went to Mississippi, planted a church. That was a cultural shift. And then from there, we went to Pennsylvania, and we helped plant a church. And then my father-in-law, he was really struggling. He was a retired a school principal, and when he retired, he became this little country pastor. He'd filled in, and the church just grew out in the middle of nowhere. A church, rural church in Kansas, It was running like 300.
Funny how when you tell the truth, people get attracted to that.
It was great. It's so funny because all the people in his church were people that he had seen over 30 years go through. He was their principal, and he was such a relational guy too. So he got really sick, and they asked us to come help, and we thought, well, we'll go there for a year or two and just help them, make that transition. Help my father-in-law, and then it ended up being 6 years. And I'm like, okay, what's happening? And we were kind of wondering, like, okay, we're in the wilderness. It was great. It was a great experience. We loved it, and we loved the people. It was fantastic, and God was preparing us for what was to come. But then Mark Flattery called me and said, hey, would you consider coming to work at Network 21.1? And I have this idea about starting a military ministry using digital resources and really focusing, and let's understand what they need from an invisible wounds, a heart-soul issue. So that's how it all began.
2014, so 10
2014,
years.
yep. So we moved to Springfield. We dove in, made the big jump, and it was really a labor of faith. Mark said, oh, by the way, we can't pay you. You have to raise your support. So we basically were on mission status. So
But you did that with church planting, right?
Well,
It's something
to some
similar?
degree, yes, very, very close. And it was always like, you just, okay, God, here we go, And so the whole nonprofit world is just like that, right? You just live day to day. I mean, even today, driving over here today, I'm like, okay, God, we got some needs, and it's like, I know you're going to get us through. And it's always that trust factor, right? And you get to a point where, like, it's in your hands, God. It's not my problem, right?
That's right.
But we have to do our part, So there's the balance. But so I said, yeah, Mark will come. We did, and we hit the ground running, and we were involved with a lot of other things, with some world missions endeavors with Network 21. But the primary initiative that I was working on was the Warrior's Journey. So I said, well, hey, because he said, we got to really tackle this PTSD thing, and I said, Mark, I think it's more than that. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but I don't think that invisible wounds, the issues of the soul, I don't think it's just a mental health issue. I think it's a soul issue. And I said, I can't put my finger on it, but I've got some folks that I know. In fact, Brad Lewis, Brad, in fact, remember Trotter's restaurant here in Springfield?
Yes.
So
I live over near there.
That's Brad's brother-in-law.
Okay.
So I knew Brad when we were at James River.
Okay.
And I want to tell this little short part of the story. I can tell you that everything that had happened in that 32 years, including being here in Springfield with James River and all the different relationships we had, when we came here, God began to leverage every single relationship. And I try not to get emotional about this, but it's one of the most powerful experiences I've ever had with the Lord, that he said, all of this is now culminating for this thing. And so Brad was at the Pentagon. Brad was a chaplain. He was a major at the time, and we'd stayed in touch over the years. And he was now the assistant to Tom Soljum, who was the deputy chief of chaplains. And I said, that's the ticket. I said, maybe I could contact Brad. Could we do research? Would the Pentagon help us to do a survey among all military branches that were active duty and spouses and families? Because we wanted to cover military members, active, veterans, and their families. That was our goal. And how do we address the issues? And so if we could do a survey, like, what are the most unique challenges? What are the things that are causing these things that most people don't want to talk about, right? And that lead ultimately unchecked to suicidal ideation and hopelessness and all that. So he said, well, yeah, why don't you come to the Pentagon and let's meet. I'd never been to the Pentagon, so great. So we did, and we sat in the food court. I've never been to the Pentagon, but it's like we had this little food court area, and this place is massive. It's just this giant building with all these military people. It was really cool. It's kind of like, I feel like I'm coming home. I love the military feel and all the things that we had done over the years. And so I'm literally on a napkin, I'm mapping out what I think we could do. But Brad, we need your help, because I don't think it's just PTSD. And he goes, you're right, it's not. I can tell you from my experience as a chaplain, it's many things, and I can't put my finger on it either. So I said, well, here's the. I already had the survey. I said, here's the survey I put together. Could we run this by Chaplain Soljum, the deputy chief, and would he help us? He goes, yeah, I think that could be great. I said, well, great. Well, when can we meet with him? And he's like, maybe in 6 months. And I'm like, what? I was really disappointed, because I thought we could meet with him today. He goes, yeah, it doesn't really work that way. I'm like, yeah, I should have known better. So long story short, he's like, but in the meantime, let's go on a tour. So he starts walking me around. We spent about an hour taking me to a few places. I mean, it would take days to see all this, but it was kind of cool. Well, lo and behold, the first divine appointment. So we're walking down the hallway, and and who walks by us but is General Soljum, who is the deputy chief of chaplains, and says, hey, Chaplain Lewis, were you lost? What's going on? Who's this with you? He's like, sir, let me introduce you to this guy. we're meeting and you were part of the discussion. And I'm thinking, okay, here you go. Let's see. And he says, he's got this idea on how to help our guys stop dealing with these areas of invisible wounds. And I don't even think he even used that term because we hadn't come up with that term yet, but basically helping guys to overcome and using faith, and wants to be a blessing to the chaplains. And, we have this vision. He said, you got 45 seconds. Tell me about it. Go. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I didn't even know what I said, but that turned into a 45-minute conversation in the hallway with Chaplain Soldier. And he was like, we need to do this.
Okay.
So the meeting that I was hoping for literally happened. God made it happen, even though it wasn't the way I thought it would. And Brad was like freaking out because he's like, oh, this never happens.
Yeah.
He's got an agenda. It's go, 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 go. And I was not on the agenda, right? So, but God had other plans. Well, it gets better. So when we're talking, as he's talking to me, I'm like, I feel like I've met him. I feel like I know him. What is it about this guy? And so he asked me, he said, hey, you look really familiar.
Oh, no.
He said, were you in the military? I said, yes, sir. I was in the Air Force and I served in Panama. He goes, well, we were in Panama. I said, well, I was there from 82 through 87. He goes, oh, well, we didn't get there till 92. And I said, well, I went back in 92 and I pastored a little church on Coakley. Coakley was a little part of the base there, Army base. And he's like, Coakley Community Chapel. Your wife's name is Cayenne.
Oh my gosh.
And then as soon as he said that, I said, Tom and Jill. Tom Soldium. He goes, you were my pastor. And then Brad is like, what is happening? He was like, and I'm thinking, okay, God's in this. And so here's what he did. He said, hey, send me that survey. It's going to go out this week.
Oh my gosh.
And within a week, that thing went out, and we had results within a month. In the Harvard School of Business, they crunched the numbers for us. They created an empirical study. We sent out 1,000 samples, and we hoped for 150 to 2. I think if we had 150 or 200, I can't remember what the number was, but it would be empirical to make it empirical. We had 500 responses. Wow. So we had stacks of information, and through that, what happened was we came up with what we call now the 12 most fluid, if you will, or the most common, unique challenges to military life.
That's funny, common and unique, but
yes.
It's common to military,
correct,
but unique compared to civilian.
That's exactly
needs.
right. Very unique, and again, most civilians don't, and we don't. I wouldn't expect them to get it. It's hard to describe what that looks like, and so
it's a suspended world. It's very different.
It is. And what's interesting, so because people say, well, we can talk about the suicide thing a little bit because it's crazy what's going on right now. And people say, well, why is it so bad? I said, well, I think there's many factors. I think faith is one of those factors. But I think if you look World War II, 32% of the population during World War II were active duty. Mm-hmm. That's incredible. A third of the population actually were serving in the military. Mm-hmm. And so when you have that amount of people, well, everybody is connected to the military. They're all experiencing it, right, to some degree. Now, in the last 20 years, less than 0.5% of our population.
Well, and
has
Vietnam
served.
had a lot to do with that.
Oh, you bet. And being an all-volunteer force and so on. But going back to that survey, so we had the study, and it was in ranking in severity too. Mm-hmm. So we ranked them 1 through 12. PTSD was number 10 out of 12.
Wow.
It was not the main issue. Number one issue, isolation.
Yes.
Number one issue, being isolated, whatever that might look like, and so on. So we worked through isolation, moral injury, separation, family brokenness, financial issues. That was in the top 10. That was before post-traumatic stress. And so we took those, and then we built an infrastructure of care built around a warrior-to-warrior relational connectional thing, and that had to do with some conversations that I had with my nephew, and I can talk about that if you'd like me to, but I'm not sure if we need to take a break.
I think we're going to need another show. But go ahead, Lynn.
Well, I tell you what, that is absolutely interesting. I tell you what, that's just amazing. But that shows you how God works, though.
Yeah.
What you're telling us, and the audience, I know they're very interested in what you're saying, is exactly how God works. We don't understand all that, but he put all that together, didn't he?
And that story in the Pentagon was one of hundreds of now stories that I could tell you. Yeah. And it's crazy. God is in complete control of this thing. Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, God, I'm strapped in, I'm holding on. You just tell me what to do, and he's to where we are today in the last 10 years, if you would have told me we would be where we are in 10 years, I thought that's impossible. but it's not with God. All things are possible. And
Yeah,
he's-
well, we'll let Lynn chime in, and then I want to pick up on that
Okay.
because I truly think the Christian needs to look to the military and Paul's description of being a warrior to understand spiritual warfare.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of correlation.
We'll go there.
Yep,
All right,
absolutely.
thanks.
All right. Well, I tell you what, we do have two great sponsors that makes this show a reality, makes Acts Ministry really go. And so the first one is Brad Pistow. He is a certified fiduciary financial planner located right in Ozark, Missouri on Farmer Road. And I actually use him, my family, a lot of my friends. He is actually probably the best person. If you want to talk about retirement planning, he has great plans that you will never lose money in those type of plans. I did notice stock market went up very high this morning, and hopefully we'll start to see some of that. But I'm not invested in stocks and anymore. I used to have a lot of stocks, but Brad Pistow has plans that you will never run out of money before you run out of your life. And so that is really good. It's never too young to start thinking about retirement planning. Call him at 417-581-9222, 581-9222, 417. He talks to you free, doesn't cost you anything. They'll send you some books. If you call that number, they'll send you Bulletproof, Safe Money Matters, his top two books that he wrote on, has written, and they're best-selling books on Amazon. That he'll give those books to you free. And interesting enough, my very first rehab for my leg and my foot this week at Mercy Rehab in Nixon, Missouri, the gentleman that's my PT, he is also a former pastor and a strong Christian man, and he's 55, and somehow this is how God works. He said something about retiring, thinking about retirement planning, and he said, "I've heard a guy. People keep telling me about Brad Pistow."
Oh,
And I said, "Well, let me tell you about him." I'm sitting there on the table, and he says, and I tell him all about Brad Pistow. So now he's making an appointment with Brad Pistow. It's kind of how it worked with me when I was in Florida, and I heard about Brad Pistow back in Missouri.
Yeah.
So really, we highly recommend him. He is so generous to so many things that we do, and he'll donate money and help. It's just a tremendous guy. But if you're thinking about retirement planning, Brad Pistow, certified fiduciary financial planner. The second sponsor is Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia. That is John Whittaker, used to be a partner with John Youngblood, who retired. And then we have Aaron Swanson, who is the general manager for Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia. They're located at 3838 South Campbell. Their telephone number is 417-882-3838, 882-3838, 417 area code. They are actually been in business for over 45 years in Springfield, Missouri, selling cars. So they're one of the oldest family-owned car dealerships. They have new cars on one side of South Campbell. They have used cars on the other side of South Campbell. They have a lot of cars that are certified cars. We had Aaron Swanson come in and talk to us, Mary, and we will have Brad and Aaron, our John, back one more time before the end of the year, because we love for our sponsors to let people know what's going on. And you know, the reason why they specialize in certified cars is because the used cars cost a lot of money, because new cars cost even more. And so when you're buying a used car, if you can afford the difference in buying a certified car, that means they've gone over 110 inspection points. When you drive down the highway, the car is going to last much longer if it's been inspected, because they fixed everything that was wrong with that car. Going to give you some peace of mind, some security. And so I tell you what, I have bought my last two cars from these guys. I don't have sponsors that I don't know about or haven't used, and I know they're good Christian businesses. We're always looking for more sponsors, good sponsors, family-owned type businesses, and so that's our sponsorships.
all right.
Okay.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
To get back to our guest here, we have with us Kevin Weaver from the Warrior's Journey, and having a delightful conversation about really a unique life that needs a support system designed for that uniqueness, right?
That's
and,
right,
And
yeah.
you've been called to a ministry to make that happen, which is a wonderful thing to hear about. So you are the founder, and tell us a little more about the nuts and bolts. You have a new headquarters, relatively new, about 2 years old.
Yeah. We've been there. It was a year ago in July, so about 18 months now.
Okay.
Prior to that, our headquarters was at Bellcrest, and it was Chestnut Expressway in Bellcrest, just near 65. We rented a facility there. It was an office space, and It was just more offices. We didn't have any presence where anybody would just see us walk in. It wasn't that kind of a space, but we were trying to save as much money as possible. And of course, what happened as we grew, by 2020 into the pandemic, we started to explode. And what we hoped when we launched in 2016, we launched our public outreach to the military and to veterans and their families. And we hoped that we would connect with maybe 40 or 50 people a month. That was our well, if we could do that, that would be amazing. Let's see what happens. And we started on a national scale. We just put it out to all the military bases. Hey, we're here. We'd love to talk. In the meantime, we're working with chaplaincy. We started developing curriculum for chaplains to do care to the caregiver for chaplain. That was a real need. We thought, well, that's a need. Let's meet it. Yeah. And in the meantime, we were raising up our warrior connectors because we wanted to, do that one-on-one. And I can get into that.
And
a little
do
bit
you
more.
work with Pentagon people to design that?
Yeah, somewhat. We make it available to them. We work with them to find the need. What are the needs, and then we try to address and fill those gaps. There are 42,000 veteran service organizations in America. Many of them are doing great, but no one was doing work dealing with invisible wounds. Not poignant where that was their focus, and that became our focus. So that was really great. So things began to take off, and in 2020. Network 21.1 said, hey, you got to go. We're going to break you off. This is no longer an initiative. This needs to stand alone. And Mark Flattery was tremendous, invested in getting this moving forward. And so then we became, independent from Network. Still shared space until last year when, our executive board, which is made up of some great people locally here in Springfield, they all have a connection to the military somehow, but they're also very influential people. Jonathan Gerard from Groom's Office Environments, who is a special operations Army veteran, and Michelle Cantrell, who's on our board. Her son is a Navy SEAL. I don't know if most people don't know that, but just so we have some really great people that again, God opened up doors, and we have now 32 corporate sponsors here just in Springfield.
I saw
alone.
your website.
Yeah.
I was looking for ways that the average citizen who would be interested in supporting the Warrior's Journey might tap into your needs, but it's an unusual constellation of organizations.
It really is. So the way this works, and maybe this would be a really good segue, just briefly, I could say that what we focus on, and this became very evident to me in addition to my personal historical experience with the military. My nephew, his name is Nate, and he grew up in Kansas, graduated from high school in 2002, immediately joined the Marine Corps after 9/11. He wanted to go in the Marine Corps, and he wanted to go and fight for our country. He goes through basic training, and then in 2004, he in his unit they were in Fallujah. They spent a year in Iraq. He came home, and he was one of very few people in his platoon and in his company that either wasn't killed or wounded, and saw a lot of stuff. And so, for some reason, he trusted me to some degree because I think I was a veteran, even though I was an Air Force guy. And we always tease each other, Chair Force, Marine Corps, you eat crayons, you don't actually work, going back and forth. It's how that is. There's that rivalry. But at the end of the day,
Kind of like the Army Navy game.
Exactly. It's like there's rivalry, but we're all on the same team. It's fun. It's all fun. But he said, no, can I talk to you? And he started sharing with me what he was dealing with, the stuff that he was having really trouble. This is long before we ever did our research. This is one of the reasons why I knew it was more complex than just post-traumatic stress. He was dealing with some post-traumatic stress, but he was dealing with a lot of other stuff. And so it really was moral injury issues and injury areas dealing with, trying to compensate with what he knew was right, and how does that work with the things that I've had to do and be involved with and all that. And so I just listened. It was one of those times where, as a pastor, I was like, okay, fix it, counsel. And but God was like, shut up, just listen, and ask questions and then pray. And I did that. And I watched Nate when he would have those conversations. It was cathartic for him. It was that time for him to kind of process and feel that he could say it without being judged, and not affect, because he is a Marine. He's a quintessential Marine. I mean, he's a man's man, right? And he doesn't even want to think about weakness, because in many ways these areas seem to be weakness, right? Which they're not. You're having a very normal response to very abnormal circumstances. Yes. Well, he thought one of the ways to deal with that, he went to sniper school, went back in 2006 as a sniper for a 15-month tour. So then he comes back and he's like, okay, I got to get this squared away. I got to process this, because he was very active, very involved, saw a lot of kinetic combat, and so it just really created these wounds, these issues. And so again, watching him work through that. So I made Nate kind of our test pilot, if you were, our test subject as we were developing these things, and we did many interviews, and he was very helpful, and even through that. And now he's doing fantastic. He's still in. He got out, actually went to school, got his degree, went back in as a commissioned officer. He just made lieutenant colonel, and he's still in to this very day. And he has thrived. And that's a whole nother story. Yeah, but just to say that was what really showed us that we're healing invisible wounds, warriors helping warriors. That's our motto. And so that's our bread and butter. And we do so much more than that. There's so many other things. We do VA advocacy. We do DoD contract. We became a DoD contractor. So we're doing resiliency training for division level.
That's something I looked for. Are you a government organization? Well, no. No, but we're a government contractor. So we are licensed by the DoD to actually, they vetted us, and so we can go to division command. In fact, we just were at 11th Airborne a few months ago. We worked with the division command. They had us come in, and we did a whole weekend for their command staff, including the two-star general and all of his command staff. We spent a weekend with them talking about leadership and communication skills. And so we offer these workshops, and they pay us to do it, and we don't make any money because they only pay you, which is fine. We're not trying to make money. We're just cover our expenses, and we want to come, we want to pour in. That's our goal. But we're meeting practical needs, and then it gives us opportunity. We always tell people, in fact, General Eifler, when I was there at 11th Airborne in Alaska, I said, no, sir, we have this, and this includes physical, emotional, the psychological elements, but we also have a spiritual component. How do you feel about that? Oh, yeah, far away. That's great. Whatever you guys want to do. Great. And so well, that's very interesting that you thrived under a political environment that was trying to suppress you.
And here's why.
Okay.
The reason why is
tell us why. How'd that happen?
Because we like Paul, how he said, hey, let me talk to you about that right there, the unknown God, right? There is a hunger in everybody's life to know about spiritual things. So we try to meet them at that need. What's your need? We're going to meet it. We're going to basically show the love of God, and not push an agenda. We're going to push our love. Our love for Jesus is going to shine through without having to even hopefully say that.
Oh, you mean relationship, not programs.
There you go.
Yes.
And then through that, there's trust. And then from there, they're like, hey, whatever you want to do. And then when we start talking about how this, we just share our testimony. The Bible says that we overcome by the power of the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yes.
It's those two things. And so we live in that world, and we say, you cannot argue with someone's story. It is what it is, right? Whether you think it's for you or not is irrelevant. But here's the truth, and so that's what our warrior connectors, when we raise them up, you're not counseling, you're just sharing your story and giving people hope to know that what seems impossible, you've come through it, and they're going to discover that too. So we have had over 63,000 case management engagements since 2016. Wow. So that means that we have actually engaged and offered services, programs, and resources. We have an in-house publishing house. We've created small group peer-to-peer guides. I could bring all the stuff. It's amazing.
I've seen some of this fabulous material you have.
And God's put together a great team. And listen, I just happen to be the guy that Oh, you hear, and God's done the work. I mean, I tell you
Yes.
what, it's a team. It has nothing to do with me. You know, it's been fabulous to see the Lord just bring some very high quality people to us. And then in addition to that, we've had now suicide prevention has been a big thing for us. And we wanted to offer an intervention opportunity. So when someone felt like, and I'll give you one quick story, Frank, Idaho, this was early on. We trained our guys, hey, if someone, you know, if they're thinking about taking their life, you know, don't shy away. Tell your story. But if you get over your head, give me a call. Here's my number, and I'll put my pastor hat on, and we'll do what we can. So I get a call Sunday afternoon. This guy says, hey, this guy Frank, here's his number. You need to call him. He's in a bad way right now, and he wants me. It's over my head. Can you take this? Because I don't want to mess this up. I was, well, what's going on? He said, well, he's really thinking about taking his life. Called him right away. Hey, Frank. He goes, yeah, I didn't even think you'd call. And I said, well, of course we're going to call. Well, you know, hey, I'm a Vietnam vet, 2 tours. I'm living out in a camper in state land here. My wife won't talk to me. My kids won't talk to me. And the VA says that they're not going to give me any more checks because they lost my paperwork. And because he's 100% disabled and he's living out, you know, that's all he got to live on, completely isolated. And I said, well, we can help you with that. He said, no, you can't. And he goes, and unless you tell me why I shouldn't do it, I have my pistol in my hand, and I'm going to pull the trigger while I'm on the phone with you. I'm going to take my life. And I'm like, whoa, you know, okay. Well, part of me was, this is where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yes.
The other part of me was, wait a minute. And I just let it all hang out, right? I had a Trump moment. Okay. I just said, I'm just gonna be transparent. I'm like, brother, why would you do that to me? And he's like, what? I said, if you take your life while you're talking to me on the phone, what do you think that would do to me? Well, you don't care about me. I said, whoa. Yeah, I do. I mean, hey, I'm a veteran. You're a veteran. I don't know you, but I love you. Hey, brother, come on. You know, that would devastate me. I would have to live with that for the rest of my life. And he said, I never thought about that because I just didn't even think anybody cared. I said, well, I care. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are a lot of other people that care. He put the gun down. 30 minutes later, he's even laughing. You know, we kind of got over that hump, right?
Yeah.
And I said, listen, we're going to fix this. And in 24 hours, we're going to have this VA thing taken care of. And we have people that we knew that would call. And he's like, that's impossible. Never happen. I said, I'm going to have our VSO call you. He called him. Next morning, 10 o'clock, he calls me back and he says, who are you people? Because he went down to the VA. It was just a glitchy thing. It just took a little bit of intentionality.
Yeah.
And I don't blame the VA. It's a big organization. Sometimes they mess stuff up, right? And if you don't get the right person at the right moment, at the right time, it can get very frustrating with these guys. And so that was another thing. We advocate for them. We do paperwork for them. We do this kind of stuff because, look, we get it. You don't want to do it. It just seems overwhelming. So we step in. And that's been a great source of, we're going to love you. And then they're like, hey, would you like to talk about other things? Yeah, anything you want to talk about. I'm game.
Yeah.
So since then,
You're a miracle worker.
yeah, which is kind of silly because it was just a phone call, you know. But we knew how to do those things, right? So
Yes,
how do we
yes.
take those skills, apply that, and it's been fabulous. So we've had at the time, he was one of our first major interventions. And I was like, hey, we got to capitalize on this because if Frank's out there, I know that there are thousands of guys like Frank.
Hey, Kevin, we're going to run out of time.
Okay.
But let me do this.
Sure.
How do people, we've had people today, fascinating stories. So how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, best way to
organization.
best way to get hold of us. You can call our phone number. It's 417-567-4800. That's
567-4800.
4800. That's our office phone. Or even better, if you go to our website, super simple. It's twj.org. That's it. Just twj.org for the Warrior's Journey. Yep. And yep.
I have a question though
Sure.
before we try to wrap up here. You
Yeah.
have an honor event.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more about this? Because it looks like kind of a package
It is.
that maybe a church could tap into and say, will you come and organize this event for us?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Oh, my.
So we do about 150 honor events a year with churches across the nation, and some churches just don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle it. So we'll say, hey, we'll come in. There's no cost. We'll come in. We'll help you as much or as little as you want, but we can offer resources to reach the veterans in your church. And even better, why not make that reach the veterans in your community that don't go to church and create something where you can draw them in. And then we're going to help you speak a language. A lot of pastors are afraid. They're like, I'd never served in the military. I don't know how to do that. Man, those guys, I just don't know if I could. We're going to help you. So we actually even do how to become a church-friendly or a veteran-friendly church. We do a become a military-friendly church workshop. We actually do that for folks. So that could be part of that on our event. So, and what we'll do, we customize, and that which is true for everything. They say, what's your program? It's so good, Mary. You've helped me this morning because you said,
thank you.
Well, because here's our program. It's relationship, and our programs are actually, the actual hands-on program is birthed out of what is it through relationship do we triage and discover what that person or people need, and we address those issues accordingly. So
because
that's
what these morally wounded people need is the healing of Jesus.
They do.
They should be finding it in churches.
And this is why the VA does not succeed in suicide prevention.
Got it.
They have an 18% success rate, and they throw billions of dollars at this thing. We've had over 2,600 interventions. We've only lost one person. We have a 99% success rate. People say, "How do you do it?" It's a soul issue, guys.
That's right.
It's not a mental health issue alone. It's a soul issue.
That's right.
Well, thanks for what you do. You know what? I always say this. Everybody that's been on our show, Kevin, is a difference maker. Mary and I talk to a lot of difference makers, and you and your organization are difference makers to everyone.
Right.
Well, thank you.
So what I'd love for you to do, if you're a listening audience, is to go to the website, contact the Warrior's Journey, look at different activities.
We can
that maybe
volunteer. You can get involved. If you've served in the military, you can become a connector. If you want to, just please pray for us. And if you like to give financially, with every dollar, we can actually connect with 7 individuals.
And maybe
with $1.
schedule a screening of Greater Love.
Absolutely, which is a great movie project. We've been a part of a lot of film There's all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of stuff.
Sorry.
You just need to get connected to the Warrior's Journey.
Love to help you.
And would
Yes.
love for you to know that this weekend at Northview Center, which is off of Kearney Street, there's going to be celebrating Veterans Day. So it's this Friday, November 8th at 12 p.m. They're serving lunch. They're going to have an honoring service members, past and present. This is sponsored by the Park Board. So it's a way for the Springfield community and the Greene County Park Board to recognize our veterans and their service in basically a non-governmental. I mean, it's county government, but it's not federal government. It's not military.
Right.
It's trying to build relationship between the community and introduce, I would say, scratch the surface of what it means to be reintegrated into community.
Yep,
So
big
this
issue.
Friday at Northview Center, again, it's the Greene County Park Board that's sponsoring this. They will have a special flag folding ceremony from the VFW, Post 3404, and a suggested donation, but actually, if you can't afford that, it's free. It's just about getting together.
So good.
Yeah, so
good.
I'm going. I promised them I would go, and I hope others will go there as well.
And I kind of just say thank you. Thank you for giving opportunity for this to be in front of people. And all those who are watching or listening, thank you for being mindful of those who have served, who've given their lives to constitute our ongoing liberty and freedom in this country.
It's an honor, and I hope you book us for more time because
Absolutely.
I need
Anytime.
to have you back and
Anytime.
and do the reverse. Okay, so we've talked about community in the military. I really need to get into how God uses that illustration of the military to say that's what my people are.
Yeah. No,
So
that's good.
We'll do that.
You're right.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Hey, you bet. Thank you, guys.
Hey, great show, guys. I tell you what, happy Veterans Day out there on Monday to all our veterans. I tell you what, and their family members. And we'll be back next Wednesday, same time.
Great.
We're the United